Hi, it's Trace Perot here. I wanted to talk a little bit about this song I wrote called Miss Mystery, which I'm currently performing with this new band, 44U, 7-piece band. Everybody else is singing cover songs. I'm singing all original songs. All original songs that I wrote. And that's my main shtick. I'm a songwriter. I often laugh, joke around that I fake everything else. But I don't fake rock songwriting. Anyways, I'm currently doing this song with this band. And it sounds great live, by the way. It also is on a recorded version, which is completely different on SoundCloud under, what's it under? God, I can't even remember. I think it's under the Temple of Love or the T-Ray or Tracy Ray Band. T-Ray Band, probably, on SoundCloud. It's an all-electric version, and it's much different. Anyways, it's called Miss Mystery. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the song itself, the lyrics, how I wrote it, when I wrote it, the circumstances and whatnot. So I was once, I was in Nashville one time and I was reading a book about songwriting where they interviewed all these songwriters, and Dylan came in there. He had a piece in there and he said, you're not really totally conscious when you write a song. It really streams from your unconscious mostly. So you're only half conscious when you do these things. That's why these songwriters say, oh, well, it just came through me. The song came through me. Well, it's true. A good song comes through your unconscious, basically. So you have to be a little unconscious when you write them. And the music itself helps you to get in that state so that the lyrics flow a little bit. Anyway, and you can't really teach somebody how to write a song. You can teach them how to write a formula, how to write a formula. By the way, I'm Trace Perot. I'm the raw vegan cowboy. 30 years organic raw vegan. All I can say about that is it works. End of story. And I'm on Facebook, Tracy Ray, TraciRay. I'm on Instagram, Raw Vegan Cowboy, and also Tracy _music. Where else am I? Primarily Facebook and Instagram. So anyways, so what was I saying? So, you can't really teach somebody to write a song. I mean, you can teach them a formula, but if somebody says they're going to teach you how to write songs, you got to be a little bit skeptical because it's almost impossible. Good songs, true songs, good songs come from deep down inside, and it's really about accessing a part of you that is not normally accessed, I think. So anyways, so the song Miss Mystery, just like, similar to Tokyo, that song that I'm also doing with this band. I was in Los Angeles. I was on the Sunset Strip. Actually, I think it's not on Hollywood Boulevard. It's on Sunset Boulevard. So yeah, that is the Sunset Strip. And I think it's near La Cienega and Sunset. About a year or two after the club, the House of Blues, opened up, and I happened to be working in Motown Productions in the video and assisting Suzanne DePass in her endeavors to make films like Lonesome Dove and whatnot, doing music videos and whatnot. And I drove down Sunset Boulevard every day because I lived in Westwood, right? So when the blues, whatever it's called, opened up initially, it was several months later that I was driving by and I thought, I had a band at the time called The Strangers, and I was looking around for places to play. And so I decided to stop at the House of Blues, right? I'd never seen it, I heard all about it. And so I stopped and I went into the House of Blues and kind of poked around and looked around. And once again, just like when I was in Little Tokyo and saw this Japanese woman at a bar, I saw this pretty young woman in the House of Blues. It was like early evening. She was walking around and whatnot, not really talking to anybody, and she was dressed all in black, and she had jet black hair down to her butt, okay, and it was perfectly straight. And when I finally got a look at her face, she looked exactly, she had all the features of a model, the high cheekbones and the whole thing, just amazingly, good looking like a model. And just the whole idea, because inside the House of Blues was kind of dark, and she was all in black, and the only thing you could see was her white face. She had this lily white, perfect skin, and she had dark features, very dark hair and dark eyes, and it was just a very, very striking image, right? And so, of course I remembered it. It made an impression on me, and I don't know how long after that, it came into my mind, right, that she was very mysterious, and that's where I got the name of the song, which is called Miss Mystery, right? Kind of a poetic, what do they call that, alliteration. And so when I saw her, it had the impression on me because I studied Spanish from the time I was 12 years old until I was like 24. I was in a Spanish class every single year of my life in school through college, from the time I got in the 6th grade in junior high school, right? So basically it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 years I studied Spanish. And of course it was, quote unquote, the King's Spanish, or Castilian Spanish, which is the Spanish of Spain. So we didn't learn a lot of Mexican Spanish, although we had Mexican Americans everywhere. I had friends that were Mexican Americans that spoke Spanish. We never hit that on school at that time. It wasn't, it hadn't percolated through the culture that there's, a respectable Spanish that's different than Castilian, that's spoken in Mexico and then adapted to America for Mexican Americans, right? So yeah, I had all these Spanish. So I always had Spain and Mexico, and I traveled down to Mexico several times, and I spoke Spanish whenever I could, and I was reading Spanish books like Cervantes and all this stuff, and so yeah, I was kind of involved in the whole Spanish thing, right? And so she struck me as being rather looking like a woman from Spain, right? So that was the first thing. That was sort of the framework around which I wrote this song, was this sort of ambiance of Spain, right? Well, at some point, from the time that I saw her, I think, and the time that I wrote the song, I had read this novel called Iberia by James Michener. Now, Michener writes popular fluff novels about history, for mass consumption, and, not always historically accurate, pretty well trumped up, to be dramatic and all that stuff, which is all right. It's entertaining. I mean, are historical facts in there and a general flow of the history of a place, but, not exactly what I call the real thing, right? So that's Michener. He gets all these researchers together, maybe have 1 or 2 primary researchers, and they do all the dirty work, the footwork, in the libraries, looking things up and everything, and they bring all the material to him, and he puts it together in a novel, right? And Iberia is like 500, 600, 700 pages long. It's a very long book. I actually met one of his research writers, his primary research writers, in a place called Cohasset, Massachusetts, which is about 30 miles south of Boston on the coast. I rented a house to him, believe it or not, and his wife were going to move in, and he was preparing to write another Michener, get involved in another Michener project. So that was very interesting. Yeah, so I read this book, and in this book, and I didn't have a perfect memory of this that I read, but there was a story about a young woman in a village, and I believe it was in Andalucia. And this young woman was very, very beautiful, and she, quote unquote, caused a lot of trouble in the town. And that's really all I could remember. And I don't know that he mentioned anything else about the woman. It was just in the historical record, I guess, and he had woven it into his book. And I should probably go back and check it out and see what it was all about. But you can imagine, young, beautiful woman in a small village in Andalusia. And, I imagine it had something to do with boyfriends and driving men a little wacky and stuff like that, So that's the framework that I wrote this song in. Okay, so let's just dive into the lyrics. Okay, the lyrics are all about Spain, and so is the music video. Okay, that I made with very limited resources, primarily on an iPhone, which you can do these days. So it's a fairly simple song, but it can be dressed up in a band because you have all the backup and everything, and it sounds great. But it's got an intro, and I'll just play a little bit of it. I'll play like the first verse. I won't even play the chorus. Part of the intro is like. Street, I listen to you, fainted heat, morning dew, sky is cold and orange, and I run to you, try to fight. So that's what the song sounds like. That's the verse, not the chorus. So as you can see, it's kind of a haunting type thing. We're talking 15th century Spain here, right? So we're going back in time. So it's got to have some kind of, some kind of echo. Which is the way to introduce the song. It removes you from wherever you may be, hopefully. And it's going to take you on a journey to Spain. So the first scene opens up, and it's a street scene in Spain, in a small Spanish village, right? So above the street, I listen to you, in the fainted heat, in the morning dew, right? So Spain is hot, especially in the summertime, and, it cools off at night, so the heat is fainted, like a woman on the street, because it's too hot, right? The heat itself is fainted. I listen to you, and the morning dew has come on. The sky is cold in the rainy night, or was cold in the rainy night. Run to you, try to fight. Okay, so we're establishing a relationship here. There's a man or somebody involved who is either suiting or seeing this woman or involved with this woman somehow. So this is what the verse sounds. This is what the second verse sounds like. Black and gown, fooling around, snake and charm. I won't do you harm, no. 1,000 years you're carried about, 1,000 eyes that follow you out. Yeah. So that is the second verse, all right? So let's talk about that. So initially, we just had a street scene. And mind you, this just comes to me. I don't figure this shit out. I talk about it later, and I go, oh, that's what I was trying to say. So black and gown fooling around. So something's happening. Something's starting to happen, right? Either this guy in the street who's run to you, I try to fight from the first verse. Either the boyfriend's showing up or the man or whatever, the bullfighter or whatever, whoever it is, going after this, suiting this beautiful young woman. And then it goes snake and charm, I won't do you harm. Well, snake and charm, I think we all know what that is. That's a phallic symbol, right? So we're getting into a little depth here. And then it goes into 1,000 years, you're carried about. That's the next line, the third line of the verse. So that is a reference all of a sudden to the Virgin, to the Madonna, right? I mean, Spain is a very religious country in terms of, Catholicism, right? And so the Catholic religion, the whole Spanish mythology is very prominent. And this whole idea of 1,000 years you're carried about is a reference to the spread of Christianity and the popularity of worshiping the Virgin Mary, probably for at least 1,000 years before this happened. Or it's AC 1500, so it's been 1500, but 1,000 just works. So 1,000 years you're carried about, and that's a reference to the Virgin, which you see elevated in parades on platforms, is carried through the streets in all of the, especially Latino, Spanish-speaking countries of the world, and certainly in Spain. So that's where that image came from. And that's something I just had in my psyche that popped out, right? It's not saying, whoa, I need to talk about that. No way. It just came out. So, and then the next line, 1,000 eyes that follow you out. So now this is pulling it away a little bit from just the Virgin idea, because if this girl is creating a lot of stir in this village, there's a lot of eyes on her. So the reference is 1,000 eyes that follow you out. So wherever she goes, there's eyes on her, maybe not 1,000, obviously not 1,000, but that sort of ties it into the, that sort of poetic license. It ties you into that Virgin idea of 1,000 years, right? So then it goes to the chorus, which is very simple. The chorus is just, so on and so forth. So that is the chorus, okay? Now we're going to the third verse, okay? Now the third verse, there's some action going on. Things are starting to happen. The story's developed. We've established the scene. We've established the sort of mythological connection. And we know it's in Spain, cobblestones, hilltops, that could be anywhere, but it's, you're going to get a feel for the Spanish thing, right? So the next one goes, stucco block, deign to talk. It goes, stucco block, deign to talk, a window pane, gently bang, the hilltops call to the streets below, cobblestone, pleasant grove. So let's take a look at that verse. Stucco block, deign to talk. So stucco, obviously, is something you see in Spain. It's also all over, my hometown, Santa Barbara, California, where everything is stucco, right? Stucco and red tile roofs. So that's reiterating the scene, and then it's stucco block, deign to talk. So deign is an archaic word in the English language, and that came through, I think, because in the 15th century we would be using these archaic terms not in English necessarily, but in Spanish. So Dane suggested, since the song's not written in Spanish, it's written in English. I was pulling that archaic phrase out of Old English, actually it's Shakespearean basically, to height, that just heightens the whole feel of the song, right? Because you're transported by one single word into an archaic time, 15th century Spain. So then we go to window pane, gently vane. So we've all experienced or had encounter with the Spanish woman and her fan standing in the second story window, fanning herself over the street. So, that just came through. That just came into my mind. Window pane, she's at a window. Gently vain, or she's calling attention to herself and engaging in some vanity, right? So that's what our 15-year-old girl is involved in, probably more mature than a 15-year-old girl these days. And then it goes into the hilltops call to the streets below. Okay, so that's painting a picture once again, bringing the scene even more into the picture. The hilltops call to the streets below. So we're drawing a parallel, or we're drawing the attention from this outside framework of these hills in Andalusia, and we're bringing it right down to the street, which is cobblestone, and we're looking up at the window, which has the young, beautiful Spanish woman in it, right? Fanning herself or whatever. And then it goes cobblestones, pleasant groans. Well, we all know what that refers to. So cobblestones is just another reiteration of the Spanish ambiance, the street ambiance in a village. And pleasant groans immediately jumps us into something else that is going on, right? Or went on, or is about to go on, right? And we all know what that is. And then it goes to the chorus. Then there's a solo. Now, we're going to go into, I don't know, you wouldn't call it a darker side, maybe a deeper side of the whole scene, right? And, I don't know where this came from. I think it came from the fact that, so often a love affair, or possibly in this girl's experience, because she was actually causing trouble in the Spanish village, that things got a little heavy duty, right? So here it is. Corrupted heads, loaves of bread, flung to the future, to the edge of dark, players fall with your call, stones are laid, dark charade. Okay, so let's take a look at that. This is where things get interesting. So corrupted heads, loaves of bread. So loaves of bread is, of course, reminiscent of Spain, where they sell bread on the street, especially in the 1500s. They were probably selling it right on the street, right? Like they do today in many places in Spain. Corrupted heads is a loose reference to what I would call the old guard, good old boy Spanish, authorities in the town, right? Or the people that have prominence and they're good old boys and they're in Spain. And so I just tag them as corrupted heads, right? Because most politicians are corrupt. And, I'm sure at that time it was no exception, right? So we're expanding I'm expanding the ambiance to start including some sociological factors if you want to analyze this, right, of course, I did not go there when I was writing the song. It just came to me. And then it says flung to the future. Loaves of bread flung to the future, to the edge of dark. Okay. So, I mean, this is, with that loaves of bread in there, which is also a survival thing. It's food. It's a basic staple of people in Spain. And we've flung it to the future. So we're kind of abandoning, our survival instincts, which may have something to do with messing around with this, love affair with somebody maybe you're not supposed to be messing around with. And we're throwing it to the edge of dark. So there's this darkness out there. And, who knows? If you're involved with this woman, what kind of darkness on the edge is waiting for you? Who knows what 15th century Spain was like? I don't know when they had the Inquisition, but, people were in a different headspace. So if something socially unacceptable was going on, then there was probably a real threat. So I think that's where that's coming from. So the next line is players fall, await your call. So this is a reference to the fact that there's several suitors probably for this young woman, and they're awaiting your call, and they're falling off. It reminds me of the House of Bernard Alba, a play by, I forget his name. He's a famous Spanish playwright, and he wrote a play about these 7 sisters that lived in the House of Alba, right? And they were secluded in this house. And there was this witchy old woman who was the mother, and she wouldn't allow them out. She wouldn't allow them to see certain men and things like this, and they were kind of notorious in this little village in Spain. And so that's what it reminds me of. There were suitors coming around, right? There were all these suitors coming around to these 7 sisters, and some of them were very good looking, other ones were not so appealing, and there was all this fuss about whether or not this sister would get a husband, this sister wouldn't, so there was all that going on. So that's where that came from. That's actually a direct literary reference that sort of came through my unconscious, because I had, read The House of Bernard Alba prior to that, probably in Spanish. So players fall, await your call. Stones are laid, dark charade. Okay, so stone is something that is very reminiscent of Spain. A lot of the houses are made out of stone, right? And stone also has the material quality of being very solid, unforgiving, inflexible, and, can be very beautiful. So stones are laid. So something's going on here. I'm not sure what. Maybe some determination is cropping up in some of these suitors, right? Somebody saying, well, I'm going to have this woman, whether she or anybody else likes it or not, right? So I'm going to set that in stone. So that's kind of where that came from. And then it says dark charade. So charade is like a make-believe thing. Dark charade sort of suggests that people are wearing masks, and of course the young woman has the mask of beauty, and, maybe she's got some suitors that she doesn't want anything to do with it, and that's kind of the dark charade part of it. And then we go to the last verse. The last verse is, we've kind of set the scene and we've told a little bit of a story, but we've just suggested the story, okay? The story is that this beautiful young woman, 15th century Spain, is being suited. She probably, completed her love interest at some point in a second story, stone building. And, many suitors were disappointed, or there were people out there that didn't approve of it or whatever. So we do have a little story there, right? but it's mostly suggestion, right? Now the last verse goes like this. Streets are full, dread the bull, sound in flight, yours tonight. The hilltops call to the streets below, cobblestone, pleasant grown. So, then he goes back to the first verse and repeats the first verse. So, let's look at the lines here. The streets are full, dread the bull. Okay? Well, that comes from, first of all, the fact that I am a Taurus in astrology. Taurus is the bull. And the fact that the bull is a very significant animal in Spain. And and sorely abused, murdered, slaughtered in bullfights. Bullfights are an intense aspect of Spanish culture. You know, Death in the Afternoon, written by Ernest Hemingway, is all about bullfights, and it's one of the most intense books ever written. It takes a bullfighter through his entire progression, one step at a time. And it's just an amazingly intense book about bullfighting. So in Spain, and of course we know that Hemingway hung out in Spain a lot after the Second World War. And that's where he wrote a lot of his things like, I forget the name of his books. It's been a while since I've read them. You know, Tender is the Night. No, that was Fitzgerald. Hemingway was, oh God, To Have and To Have Not, things like that. But he did write a big book about Spain. And this is a very unknown book. It's called Death in the Afternoon, which says it all, because if you've ever seen a bullfight, and I'm not proud to announce that I have seen a bullfight, an actual bullfight in the ring in Tijuana, it's all about the shadows creeping across the bull ring, right? As the shadow creeps across the bull ring, the bullfight goes on, and the bull ultimately, in most cases, is killed by the matador. But that shadow is always there, and it's always moving into the scene. So there's always the potential for disaster for the bullfight. Well, you know, I don't have any sympathies for bullfighters. They're just kind of ignorant, you know. And I don't believe in that kind of animal abuse. Fortunately, bullfighting has been outlawed, I believe, in Mexico. I don't know what's going on in Spain, though. So the streets are full, dread the bull. So if you've ever seen the pictures of the running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain, that's where the dread the bull comes from, because people get killed, they get maimed, they get, you know, run over by these herds of bulls, right? And so that's where that idea comes from, the street, because we were dealing with the street originally, and the streets are full. Now they're full of people, and they dread the bull because they're running the bulls through the town, right? So sound in flight, yours tonight. So this brings in I don't know, what I guess would be a fear factor. The sound in flight, well, the bulls make a tremendous noise when they trample through the street, and if they get stuck and they get caught in somebody's house, they will completely destroy and level the house if they can't get out. I mean, these bulls are massive. They weigh, who knows, 500, 600, 700 pounds, even more than that. And they can just completely level an entire stucco house, right? So streets are full, dread the bull, sound in flight, yours tonight. So this is kind of a reference to a lover committing, at least for one night, you know, their allegiance to a particular woman, in this case, this 15-year-old girl. And there's some connotations of the fact that, you know, the beautiful Spanish women hang out at bull rings, and hook up with the bullfighters, right? The brave bullfighters. So that's kind of where that comes from. I want to interject here. There are two other interpretations of that last line, which is, what is that last line? It is, sound in flight, yours tonight. So there's three levels of interpretation I can find in this. The first one is the thing about the bulls, the running of the bulls, sound in flight. So the bulls are fleeing, they're excited, they're scared, and they're running through the streets. And in the midst of all this, there's ostensibly a commitment by maybe a bullfighter to a maiden, Spanish maiden, for the evening. The second interpretation could be that it's just it's re-referencing this whole idea of the Spanish village and the fact that this would probably is an illicit love affair is taking place or has taken place, and now the man is escaping. It's kind of like the lyrics of that Allman Brothers song "One Way Out," where the guy's up in the room and he's afraid that the husband's downstairs, and so he slips out the window, right? So it could be that. It could be this unconscious streamed reference to the man sort of escaping from the scene after the fact. And so sound in flight, yours tonight. So he was hers for one night, and he's escaping. The third interpretation could be that they're both escaping, that they're lovers, and they realize that the townspeople don't approve, or they've done something that was antisocial in terms of breaking social mores in the town itself, in the village, and they're both escaping, and so that's where the sound in flight comes from. And yours tonight means that they're committing to each other, that they're going to flee together and out of the town. So I just wanted to bring that dimension in there. There's three distinct interpretations of that line. And in my process, it could have been any one of those three or all three, coming directly up from my unconscious, which grabbed a hold of those words. So I just wanted to add that. And then the next line is the hilltops, and it's a repetitive line. It came from the second verse, I think. The hilltops call to the streets below, right? Cobblestones, pleasant groans. So once again, we're pulled away from the bullfight into post-bullfight, where not only are these lovers, possibly a bullfighter and a Spanish maiden, are making love, but also possibly in this 15th century village where this young woman is being, what would you call it, consummated by a man, right? So that is Miss Mystery. So that gives you some idea of my songwriting process. Like I said, I just write these things. And this is the first time I've ever sat down and analyzed what they were about. I mean, I knew this song was about Spain. I knew it was about a beautiful young woman. I knew it was sort of suggested or inspired by Iberia, the book by James Michener, and this fleeting story about this young woman in Andalucia, Spain. But everything else was just kind of coming through my consciousness. And so I've gone back and analyzed it. But I wanted to make an interesting note about this particular song and the whole scenario of me seeing this woman at the House of Blues. So at the time I was living in Westwood, and I had a female roommate that I was sharing the apartment with. And one night she showed up with a friend of hers. And lo and behold, it was the same woman that was in the House of Blues. And, much to my surprise, and I got to talking to her about it. I said, well, were you around that area at this particular day of the week, and such a time? And, you know, she confirmed, yes, yes, yes. And so we sort of figured out that, yes, it definitely was her who was there at the House of Blues, who I was looking at, that inspired this song. And of course, she had the, you know, the jet black hair and the dark features and all that. And it turns out she was a model. She was a model for Clinique. And so she wound up becoming my wife, actually. And she was what they call a Black Irish woman. The Black Irish is a particular, in Ireland, it's, I guess you would call it a race, I don't know, but the Spanish at one point in the history of Ireland invaded Ireland, especially, I guess, in the Dublin area, and they took over parts of Ireland and they commingled with the Irish women. And out of this came what are known as people with Spanish, with Black Irish heritage. So they are Spanish and Irish together, and of course, you know, darker features will dominate. So they have very, very dark hair and dark features in terms of the eyes, but they have the you know, the white, untouched by sun skin of the Irish. And as it turns out, the Irish mixing with the Spanish resulted in these people being all very good looking. Both the men and the women are extremely good looking. And you'll find this is the case whenever you come across somebody who is Black Irish. So this woman, who subsequently became my wife after we met like this in this fortuitous circumstances, coincidental fortuity, was Black Irish. So that's an interesting little tidbit I want to add to that song. I know for myself, I have a hard time hearing lyrics when people are singing them. You know, the music usually is so overwhelming that I focus in on the music, but I wanted to start doing this with my song lyrics because they really are the, what should I say? This is the essence of my art of writing songs, are the lyrics. And so I want people to know, if they come and see, if you're going to come to this party on 420, which by the way is going to start a little before 420. I'll be doing solo and I'll be doing all original music. It's down at Papaya Farms Road, which is in, you know, you just go down, what is it, 136, down to where Four Corners used to be before the lava flow, and then you turn left and you go back into the jungle, and you come up on an intersection called Papaya Farms Road, and then you turn up that road. It's a dirt road, and you just follow the cars. There's going to be a lot of people there. There's actually two parties going on, and it's the 20th annual 420 party at Josanna's, right? So it should be a lot of fun. But anyways, what was I saying? Yeah, if you come to this party and you hear me perform this song, at least you'll know what it's about, right? You know, for us, for songwriters, there's a satisfaction in people actually relating to what we're talking about and understanding it, and not just, you know, grooving to the music is great, but we would like a little, we would like to get you tuned into the lyrics, and there's a couple of reasons for that, because hopefully it expands your consciousness, hopefully it expands your awareness, in many cases spiritual awareness, or like in this case historical awareness, because it's, you know, this is kind of an archetypical story, so it's a story that repeats itself throughout human history and experience, even present day experience. So we would like you to be able to expand along with those stories, those lyrics. And not only that, we'd like, you know, like to experience the beauty, the transcendent beauty of lyrics that come through an experienced poetic songwriter. It is, and I'm also a fine artist, it is like looking at a painting. And, good art completely changes your state of mind, changes your state of consciousness, can make you much more spiritually aware. Good art can do a lot of things for you. It can change your opinion about things. It can change your mental outlook. It can change your state. It can enlighten you. It can inspire you. So, good art, songwriting, whatever, fine art, graphic art, whatever, can do all these things. And that's what we do. That's what artists do. And, if people can get value out of that, that just makes it all that much better. So anyways, that's the story of Miss Mystery. Come on down to Papaya Farms Road if you're in the neighborhood. It's going to be a fun party. We're the only band. We're playing all night. And we got 2 great female singers. It's a 7-piece band. I'm going to do a solo show prior to the band coming on. So the solo show is going to start like 3:30, 4 o'clock or something like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a potluck. So if you bring something to eat, there's always amazing food down on Papaya Farms Road. Not necessarily vegan, but certainly organic, and not necessarily raw, but a lot of raw. But, it's also a chance to sort of expand your palate, because there's a lot of great cooks down that way, and there's a lot of great produce being grown right there on the farm. So most of the time, the food they serve at these potlucks is very fresh, very healthy, and just wonderful stuff. And you get a huge variety of people and their tastes and their ability to put dishes together and stuff. So Trace Perot, Raw Vegan Cowboy on Instagram, Raw Vegan Cowboy on YouTube, Tracy Ray on Facebook. And I hope to see you on Sunday, 4/20. Adios.